Well, hello. Thank you for clicking on this video. I appreciate it. Hopefully, this video is going to be the first in a series of videos I make, um, throughout my time here on YouTube, intermittently. Um, what today's video is going to be is the first in the series called Nostalgia Corner. And the videos are going to be what the title says. Is going to be talking about specific movies, TV shows, or other random items I have here in my home theater, and talking about my memories and my sentimental, feelings and nostalgic, feelings about the items or the movie or whatever. So real quick, I'm still trying to work the format out before I get into all this and start rambling on about stuff. Um, I don't know the format or how I'm going to do this, but I will say with like today, it's a movie. I'm not doing just a straight A to Z review of the movie, talking about like plot and character development and all that. That's not really what I'm planning on doing. It's really going to stick to the title of these videos, and it's going to be about nostalgia for me. So if you're wanting to see an actual A to Z review of whatever I have up here that I'm talking about, if it's a movie, a TV show, or whatever, uh, there's other channels out there that do that stuff. So if you do a quick search in YouTube, I'm sure you can find them. But that's not what this is going to be. So I just wanted to get that disclaimer out there at the beginning. So with that being said, let's start the actual video here today. Okay, so this is the first episode in my Nostalgia Corner series. Hopefully that's going to be a series that I do routinely, mixed in with my other videos on the channel. So today I'm doing the easiest option that I had for this video series. And one of the things I really thought about in creating this channel, and that is talking about 1986's Aliens by James Cameron. And the reason I say that was the easiest choice for me is because this holds a lot of like sentimental value to me, this movie, a lot of nostalgia, and it is my favorite movie of all time. It's my favorite movie. And I mean, I love this movie for a plethora of reasons that I'm going to kind of get into here in a minute. So yeah, so this is going to be kind of my nostalgic memories of this. So starting out, I remember this movie being one of the very first memories I have of watching a movie that wasn't just a basic kids movie like Disney or animation or something like that. I can vividly remember back when we lived at our old house growing up, which would have been in the early 90s, and my mom and I think my sisters would have been born. They would have been really young at the time, but they were gone. And so it was just me and my dad in our living room at our old house. And we were watching wrestling. This would have been on like a Saturday morning, Saturday afternoon, well before, like Monday Night Raw and SmackDown and all that was the thing. So this would have been probably on a Saturday. We were watching wrestling. And I got up and left the room. And I left the room for a prolonged amount of time. And I can't remember what I was doing. I just know that I got up and I left. And I was gone for a while. And when I had come back, the wrestling program had either ended or my dad had gotten bored with it. But he had turned it off. And this movie was playing, Aliens. And it was on the old VHS case. I vividly can remember it. It was the old CBS Fox VHS sleeve with the CBS Fox silver banner on the sides, and it was the Aliens spelled out logo with the, I don't know what you would call it, almost like censor letters on there. You kind of see the opening credits of the movie have it, and they kind of took that and put it on the box, just aliens in that weird lettering. And my dad had it on, and I walked in and I was kind of upset that, wrestling wasn't on, because I was a big wrestling fan back then, like real diehard, and I still am a wrestling fan to this day. But I was upset that the wrestling show wasn't on. And my dad said, well, just sit down and we'll see about putting it back on or whatever. And I started watching the movie that was on, and it started, my first memory of seeing this started right towards, I don't know, middle of the movie, the scene where they're going through the med lab with Ripley and the Marines. They've got all the face huggers and the little tubes, and Burke puts his face up to the tube, and boom, the alien face hugger jump scare, boom, right against the glass, and kind of scares everybody, and it got me, and I was hooked immediately from that point. And I remember watching the rest of the movie with my dad and just being enamored with the aliens, with the creatures, and the Marines, and shooting all the guns and all the action, and then all the sci-fi stuff with all the creatures. And some of it was unsettling, with Bishop at the end, him getting stabbed, and having all the white fluid everywhere and all that stuff. I remember that was pretty unsettling for me at that time, because at the time I had kind of a phobia of being sick. And so seeing him, spitting all the like white fluid stuff everywhere really stuck with me. And that kind of grossed me out and weirded me out and was unsettling for me at that point in time. But everything else about it was just great. And I didn't even see the first part of the movie kind of leading up to it. It was all from that medbay scene forward. And I remember when we were done with the movie, my mom still wasn't home. And I remember my dad telling me, don't tell your mother we watched this. And I said, okay, whatever. And I never said anything. And that's the first major memory I have of watching an adult movie that wasn't geared towards young children. Because everything I had watched up to that point had basically been animated movies, the Disney animated classics, some cartoon stuff like Ninja Turtles or something, maybe a few kind of live actiony movies, a little bit, kid friendly stuff. But I had never really watched anything that was like adult oriented. And that was the first time I had seen something like that. And from that point on, which granted, I was probably only, I don't even know if I was 8 years old at that point, 6, 7, 8. Probably too young to be watching something like that, I guess. But that made a huge shift in my dynamics for watching movies, because at that point, after I had seen Aliens for the first time, I wanted to see more stuff like that. And I ended up watching that VHS tape that I, like I said, can vividly remember, that old school CBS Fox Aliens VHS tape, dozens and dozens and dozens of times throughout my childhood. I watched that movie so many times. And it's gotten to the point, even now, today, excuse me, it's gotten to the point now that I can't even watch Aliens with other people because I can basically quote the entire movie from start to finish. And even if I'm not trying to, I just start reciting the lines and just get so involved with it that it becomes, um, kind of unfun for everyone else to be around me. So if I watch it, I usually watch it by myself, because I just get so involved in, you know, reciting the lines and all this stuff. And that's due to watching that movie the first time with my dad and watching that VHS tape so many times growing up. I wanted the toys that came out. I have on my back wall still to this day 4 of the original first run Kenner figures that came out around that time, of the alien creatures back there. I wanted that when I was playing with my toy guns, and with my younger sister. She would play as Newt, and I'd play it as Hicks. And then I had a cousin who was a little bit younger than me, but around the same age, that would come over, and they'd play as Ripley, and we'd like reenact these scenes in our basement and in our living room and out in the yard and all this stuff. And I was so enamored with the movie. I loved it so much. And it went from there to years later, jump ahead. That was early 90s, 92, 93, something like that. You jump ahead about 10 years to the early 2000s. At that point, I was in high school, and DVDs, at least in my household, had just started to become a thing for us. We still had VHS tapes predominantly up until that point. And I remember getting a gift card to Coconuts for, it was either my birthday or Christmas or something. I don't remember what holiday, but I got a gift card to Coconuts, which, for those of you who don't know, Coconuts has been out of business for years. They were with other stores like Sam Goody and FYE, and depending where you live in the U.S., Music Recyclery, or like Vintage Stock or something like that. They were a store that sold music, movies, comic books, video games, a store like that, which I'm sure, wherever you live, you probably remember. You may still have a store like that, even though most of them have gone out of business. Or you may remember having a store like that of some description, in your area. And I grew up in Chicago, so we had a whole bunch. And there was a Coconuts right by our house at that time. And at that time, we had moved into the house where my parents still live to this day. And there was a Coconuts nearby, by one of the malls by our house. And I had a gift card, and I went in there and was looking through, music and video games and everything. And at this point in my life, while I was younger, growing up during elementary school age, watching movies and TV shows and stuff was more of my thing to do if I wasn't just like playing with action figures or something. Video games hadn't really come into my life at that point. By the time I was in junior high and high school, video games had kind of become my primary thing to do. So I didn't really watch movies all that often unless we went to a movie theater, or we had, rented something from like Blockbuster or whatever, a new release that I wanted to see. I wasn't really into watching older movies at that point. I had kind of like gone through a phase where I thought I had like grown out of that and whatever. I was on to video games. I wanted to play video games. And so when I went to the Sam Goody, or I'm sorry, to the Coconuts, and was browsing the aisles, looking for something to get with my gift card, I happened to go through the movies, and right there, because it's an A, it was right at the very top of the, alphabetical list with the shelving, was the early 2000s, is like 2002 or 2003, Aliens Special Edition DVD. Now, it wasn't this one. This is the one previous to that. It was the 2-disc set in, not really a gatefold, but in kind of like a bookcase, similar to this anthology set, that opened up, and it had a picture of the Queen on the cover. And they actually did this run for all 4 of the original Alien movies, and they did them all separately. And then they ended up a few years later, when Blu-ray came out, 5 years later or whatever, ended up coming out with this, the Alien Anthology Blu-ray set. And those movies were kind of the basis for this Blu-ray set. Anyways, but there it was, Aliens, sitting, right there on the shelf in this cool looking case. And so I was kind of, looking through the back to read all the stuff. And because DVDs were kind of new at the time for me, this was my introduction, just like how this movie was my introduction into adult kind of themed movies and stuff, and not kiddie stuff anymore. This movie with that special edition DVD was my introduction to two different things: special features on a DVD and director's cuts or special editions of a previously released movie. So, for those of you who aren't aware, James Cameron has kind of made a living with a lot of his movies, not all of them, but a lot of them have had director's cuts or special edition releases after his movies have been released theatrically and the theatrical cuts released on home video. And Aliens was a big one for Laserdisc, where he did a special edition for Laserdisc, and that's where this DVD version came from, was that Laserdisc. And we didn't have a Laserdisc player growing up. We only had a VHS player, and even if we had a Laserdisc, I doubt my parents would have let me use something like that because they were so expensive at the time. But yeah, so this was my introduction into special editions, and James Cameron had this special edition of Aliens that was on this DVD set, and it had like 20 minutes or something of additional footage not seen in theaters. And I thought, I haven't watched this movie in a long time, and I never knew that there was a special edition, because this was before kind of the dominant age of the internet. It was still kind of, I wouldn't say in its infancy, but like it wasn't anywhere near as popular or as populated with stuff as it is now. And so I didn't even realize there was a special edition version of the movie that was different, that had extra stuff in it. So I ended up buying that DVD set and using my gift card on it. And I got it home and watched it. And not only was it a special edition, the other thing it introduced me to outside of the special features was widescreen, because 99% of the VHS tapes we had growing up that I owned or my family owned were the full screen pan and scan of movies. And I had never really watched a widescreen movie before at home. Although there was one that I do remember. Somehow we had a Air Force One VHS, the Harrison Ford movie, that was in widescreen. And I remember I hated it, and I remember my family hated it, and we got rid of it because they didn't like the fact that it cropped so much of the image off the TV. Because at that time, the old tube TVs and, our big TV in our living room was like a 32-inch TV in a tube TV, not even widescreen. So like, I can understand why they didn't want to watch that. And I never really cared much for it because, again, I kind of fell in line with what my parents said, because that's all I had growing up. So this also provided me that, the widescreen, and seeing the actual theatrical format, and aspect ratio and everything. And I just, again, was enamored all over again with this movie, because it gave me the director's cut with all this extra footage I had never seen that, added so much more, in my opinion, to the story, to the movie, to the characters. And it gave me the widescreen aspect. So I got to see more of the picture, so stuff that was cropped out, in the original VHS release wasn't cropped out here, and you got to see a little bit more, and it was higher quality, not by much, but higher quality than the VHS, so I got to see a little more detail on the TV. And so I was totally enamored again by this movie. And then the other thing, which I alluded to, a little while ago, was the special features. That 2-disc set, which, comes on this Blu-ray set with the special features, had this full-length documentary about the making of the movie, from pre-production all the way through its release and through its like impact in history on, cinema and on the horror and sci-fi and action genres, and talking about Sigourney Weaver and James Cameron and, Michael Biehn and all this stuff, and all the, character design from like Stan Winston and just all this stuff. And it was this big long documentary that spanned like 2 hours, going through this whole thing. And I watched that, and I was like enthralled with that, about, oh my God, like I can see all this stuff about how they did it, and all the, trial and error, and seeing James Cameron, like, discuss all these things on there. And I was like, oh man, that's so cool. Like, that's so cool. And again, that was thanks to this movie and that DVD release. And I held on to that release for a very long time. I didn't end up getting this Blu-ray set until many years later, way past when it had originally come out. I got it on a sale, like Prime Day thing, back, maybe 10 years ago, something like that. So I had held on to that DVD set for a long, long time before I finally got the Blu-ray. And that DVD spurred me into finding the original Alien, finding Alien 3, finding Alien Resurrection, and watching the alternate versions of those movies, watching all the documentaries and behind the scenes stuff on all those. And it opened up this whole new world again to me of all these like special features and stuff. So then I wanted to find more movies like that. So then it became a thing where I was constantly on the lookout to find older movies that I liked and find re-releases that had either a special edition release with like a director's cut, or ones that had these, making of documentaries and stuff and all these special features behind it. So again, that was nostalgia and everything for me because of this movie. And then because I was such a fan, this also spun into when they were going to make the Aliens versus Predator movie, because I love the Aliens movies and the Predator movies to a little bit lesser extent. I really enjoy them too, but it's kind of like Aliens is up here a little more for me and Predator is right underneath. But then when they were talking about doing that movie, and I was so like worked up and wanting to see that, so I was following early like online forums and all this stuff because I wanted to see it. And then it eventually came out and I got to like, go to the movie theater, and that was only the second Aliens movie theater experience that I ever had. I got to see Alien Resurrection at the very end of its run. And then I got to see that when it first came out. So I was super hyped, and that was all based around this movie here. And then, kind of to get to the end of my nostalgia thing for this, when I built my home theater down here, the first movie I wanted to watch when I had my home theater built was Aliens, because I knew the movie so well. I knew how the surround sound had worked, because back when I was in high school, I also got myself a cheap home theater in a box set up with the tiny little cube speakers that I had around my room and everything. I thought it was so cool that I had this little 5.1 set up in my bedroom. So I got to hear surround sound kind of for the first time with with this movie. And so when I finally built my home theater, this was my go-to movie. So when I have speakers to test, a projector to test, when I buy new stuff, whatever the case may be, this is my go-to. And this was the movie I couldn't wait to play in my home theater and watch in my home theater on a big screen, because I never got to see it in the movie theater. My memories of this have always been on smaller TVs. Even when I got a TV that was like 50 inches or whatever, yeah, that's still bigger than what we had growing up, but that still isn't the same as watching it on a 120-inch screen, in a home theater with, the dedicated surround sound and the high quality projector. And still to this day, this is one of my go-to movies when I have time to watch something. And it's, like I said, my favorite movie of all time. From the moment I saw this growing up, this became my favorite movie. And there's other movies that have come close, and this movie also opened me up, like I said, to adult movies when I was younger and wanting to see more adult stuff. But it kind of put me down, the trail of, well, this is by James Cameron. And then I had talked to my dad about, oh, who's James Cameron? Oh, here's Terminator, and here's The Abyss, and Terminator 2, and True Lies, and then like Titanic, which I thought was like a girly movie, but I have an appreciation for it now as an adult. But it opened me up to that. But it was, but then, like I said, oh, Terminator. Well, there's Arnold Schwarzenegger. So then Arnold Schwarzenegger, oh, he did there's Predator, and there's the Terminator movies, and there's Total Recall, and all this sort of stuff. And then, oh, Total Recall, well, that's Paul Verhoeven. Oh, who's that? He did RoboCop. And, so it opened me up to this big, wide range of all these other movies that now I have all these memories of. And, and is, like I said, it's my favorite movie. In this video here, I'm going to kind of end it here soon, so I'm not just rambling, but this video here, this was the easiest one to do for me because this movie is my favorite movie of all time. I love it so much because, like I said, this is the earliest memory I have of watching like an adult themed movie in my lifetime. All these 30 whatever years ago. I still remember watching this movie with my dad on that Sunday afternoon. And it's something I'll probably never forget, So, anyways, that's going to kind of wrap it up here. So I hope you guys kind of enjoyed my little ramblings here about my nostalgia thoughts. And to those of you who do watch this, video, I appreciate it. And if you want, you could leave a comment down below about, your first movie that kind of sticks in your brain like this and, kind of set you on the path for the type of movies and media and stuff that you like how Aliens did for me. And, if you like and subscribe to my channel, I'd greatly appreciate it. It definitely helps me out and, shows that there's people out there, interested in what I'm doing here on the channel. So with that, I'm going to say thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Thank you.